In the small town of Rife, whose population varies upon those that survived the night, is the most famous town in the northern hemisphere for gruesomely horrific deaths performed by ghosts, demons, ghouls, serial killers, aliens and people that sleep with plastic bags over their heads. Every night there is a murder and/or alien abduction. People still flock to this small scary town because housing prices are so low. Of course, housing is so cheap because the homes are used to lure more victims. It is often said by the survivors that the best way not to be killed is to simply sleep with a smiley face paper bag over your head. This method may seem foolish, but ghosts, demons, ghouls, serial killers and aliens are really creeped out by someone that wears a brown paper bag with a smiley face on it. It is important to remember to use a paper bag, and not a plastic bag. On this night, one unlucky homeowner will be visited by a group of aliens that are multidimensional travelers, and another home by a demon dog hellhound soul eater. But, it's just a cute little bagel that steals your soul while you are petting it. Jane, who lives on 202 West Charred Cross Street, not to be confused with plain Jane, who lived on 203 Burnt Ash Street, who was killed by hobgoblins 2 years prior to this story, was awakened by a cold chill in her room that made her hands and feet colder than usual. She turned up her heating blanket, as this is not an uncommon occurrence. She then hears a sound like a bag of potatoes were dropped on the floor. In these old wooden houses, you can hear every crick and footstep. Jane pauses for a moment as she reaches for her brown paper bag on the nightstand, listening for another sound. She withdraws her hand as she hears nothing else. Suddenly it began to rain. It only rains when something sinister happens. Unless, of course, she thinks, aliens. Aliens always enter the houses before the rain. Aliens don't like the rain. It's difficult enough being a multidimensional alien that travels between over 17 million, always changing realities, but when all your crew and everyone on your planet look exactly the same, it can get confusing. This is especially true when you look oddly like Nicolas Cage the actor. Because of this problem, the Chronos, the name of these particular beings, wear different items to uniquely identify themselves. Tonight's unique item is Jane's Uncle Timothy's face. No! She yells to herself, as she peers into the living room, while wearing her paper bag, as the aliens perform surgery, switching Tim's face with one of the Nicolas Cage ones. The procedure is almost complete, and now her uncle looks like a young Nick Cage. Seemingly pleased with its new face, the other aliens gather around him or her and tout how lovely he or she looks. The Uncle Timothy alien stares at his new face in an alien face reflection device. Something we would call a mirror. He pushes up on the left side of it. He then nods in approval. Meanwhile, Jane's uncle, now sporting a young handsome Nicolas Cage face, will also be pleased. There are 5 alien creatures in total around an alien-like surgeon's table that they undoubtedly brought with them. One alien wears the face of Mr. Jensen from her school. Another wears the face of Mrs. Myers from down the street, whose son bought her the house after she lived with him and his wife for a few months, and a third face she wasn't familiar with. The remaining 2 are the alien with the face of her uncle and one alien that still has his original face, Nick Cage's. Jane pulls down on the brown paper bag with a smiley face she is wearing. She freezes, as all 5 aliens slowly turn toward her in the kitchen doorway. They make no attempt to get closer to her, and she makes no attempt to run. She learned from nature documentaries, things that run away look like food. This was the same thought as the aliens. They didn't want to look like food for a paper bag smiley face creature. So, both stay completely still, not wanting to trigger a predatory reaction in the other. Meanwhile, demon dog hellhound soul eater named Cutie Pie Love Face is finishing off the remains of the Miller family's souls. The weight of a human soul has been calculated by the physical weight of its host. A 120-pound human may have a .120 soul. A 300-pound human would have a soul that weighs exactly .300 of a pound. Losing your soul doesn't mean death. There are many people that have lost their souls and continue to live prosperous lives in politics and working for news agencies. What the soul contributes to the body is love, compassion, and empathy. When a body with a soul dies, it moves on to another plane of life. If a bodies die without a soul, they become zombies, but mostly they finish their law practice until their flesh rots away. Jane and the 5 aliens are still locked in a frozen Mexican standoff. Who will be the first to run? In a cat and mouse game, Jane knows you never want to be the mouse, so she takes a small step forward, towards the frightened aliens. The aliens at once take a step back. She then takes 2 steps forward and they take 2 steps back. Jane has a wide smile hidden beneath the paper bag. She then decides to risk something new by making the smiley face on the bag look even more creepy and waving her arms up and down like one of those inflatable tube men outside a car dealership. The aliens panic and try to run away, but instead they all run into each other and bounce back like lunatics. The alien that stole her uncle's face, in a state of terror, rips off his new face and tosses it at Jane like a flesh-face frisbee. Startled, Jane takes a step back. The other alien, seeing that Jane stepped back, think they can defeat her by throwing their faces at her, too. It was a terrifying sight to watch grown aliens tear off their faces, toss them at Jane and run away. If the sight of 5 multi-dimensional traveling aliens without faces isn't disturbing enough, underneath their faces look like they are made of spaghetti, or bloodworms. She will have to Google them later to see. Back at the Miller's house, the demon dog hellhound soul eater named Cutie Pie Loveface has already left and is digesting the love and joy of the souls that it stole. The Miller family are all talking about going to law school. With the faceless aliens now gone, Jane's Uncle Tim is beginning to wake on the alien table that was left behind. Still groggy, he swings his feet around and sits up on the table's edge. Alien face replacement is a near-perfect science. There are no seams, no cut lines and nothing to indicate that surgery has been performed. Just a little bit of itchiness. Tim hops off the table, still a little dizzy, then slips on the face of Mrs. Myers, then just stays down and stares at the ceiling without blinking. "I would just try to rest, and I'll explain everything later, Tim," said Jane from beneath the bag. With 5 faces on the floor of 3 neighbors, Uncle Tim, and 1 alien Nick Cage spread out like pancakes, Jane picks them up with a spatula, places them in Ziploc freezer bags and puts them in the freezer. Admittedly, it is a strange thing to do, but this is a strange place to live.
For more stories like this, click like and subscribe.